The same week, I finally crawled out from under the debt that almost destroyed everything we had built. I found out my wife was pregnant with another man's baby, not just any man, the same man who had rescued us from that debt, the same man who had been my best friend since we were 7 years old, the same man who stood at my wedding and told 200 people I was the luckiest guy alive. By the time I understood what had really happened to me, he was already in handcuffs. I was standing in a hospital hallway with my phone in my hand, staring at a message from my wife that simply said, "I need to tell you something. Please don't hate me. This is a long story. I'm telling it because I still don't know if I did the right thing. And maybe hearing all of it will help someone else see what I still can't." Daniel and I grew up on the same dead-end street in a neighborhood where kids still played outside until the streetlights buzzed on. We were 7 when his family moved in. He had a buzz cut, a soccer ball tucked under one arm, and zero fear of walking up to the quiet kid sitting alone on the curb. "You wanna play?" he asked, like it was the easiest thing in the world. We played until it got too dark to see the ball. By the time his mother called him in for dinner, we had already decided we were best friends. That kind of friendship doesn't happen often. It becomes the background music of your life. When my dad lost his job and money got tight at home, Daniel's family somehow always had extra groceries they needed help carrying in. When his parents fought loud enough to shake the walls, my MOM would already have the spare blanket on the couch before he even knocked. We covered for each other's stupid teenage mistakes the time he snuck out, and I lied to his MOM about where he was. The time I failed a math test and he forged his mother's signature so I wouldn't get grounded. We thought we were untouchable as long as we had each other's backs. I still have a scar on my left knee from the summer we tried to build a bike ramp and I went over the handlebars. Daniel carried me 3 blocks home. He told my MOM I fell off the curb. She knew he was lying. She bandaged me up anyway. That was the kind of loyalty I thought we had. We went to the same college, different dorms, same friend group, same late night pizza runs. And it was there, in the campus bookstore during our first year, that Daniel saw her first. He pointed her out like he was claiming territory. "That's the one," he said, half joking, half serious in the way guys do when they're scared to actually do anything about it. "I'm gonna talk to her." He never did. Weeks passed. He kept saying soon, kept finding reasons to wait. I wasn't trying to steal anything from him. I want that clear. But we ended up in the same study group for a shared elective assigned seating. Nothing more. Amara sat next to me. She was sharp, dryly funny in a way that made me forget to be anxious, and completely uninterested in performing for anyone. We started talking. Really talking. By the time I realized I was in trouble, it was already too late. I told Daniel before I told anyone else. I watched his face the way you watch someone you love, looking for the smallest crack. He smiled. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Good for you, man. She's great." He never once said it bothered him. So I believed him. For years, I believed him completely. It wasn't until almost a decade later that I started putting the pieces together in reverse. In our final year of college, Amara and I hit a rough patch. Nothing dramatic, just 2 21-year-olds trying to figure out if the future we wanted actually lined up. During that stretch of uncertainty, I went to a party and met another girl. We talked, that was all. But someone made sure Amara heard a much bigger, much uglier version of the story. It nearly ended us. Years later, I learned the person who introduced me to that girl at that exact party, who made sure Amara's friend was standing close enough to overhear the exaggerated version, was Daniel. At the time, I had no idea. Daniel was the one who talked me through it. He told me to give her space, to let it blow over, to not chase her. Every single piece of advice he gave me was designed to keep the wound open just a little longer. It didn't work. Amara and I sat down face to face, no intermediaries, and fought our way back to each other. We got engaged 2 years after graduation. Daniel was my best man. I need you to sit with that for a second. The man who had quietly tried to break us apart in college stood beside me at the altar and raised a glass to 2 people more perfect for each other than anyone I've ever seen. He looked me in the eye while he said it. His voice didn't even waver. I hugged him afterward, my hand on the back of his suit jacket, and told him I couldn't have done any of it without him. I meant every single word. I still remember the way Amara's hand felt in mine during the first dance war. A little shaky from the champagne and the eyes on us, and how Daniel caught my eye from the head table and gave me that same easy grin he'd had since we were 7. For one perfect moment, I thought I had everything a man could want. I had no idea the grin was already hiding the first fracture. We built something real, not flashy, not perfect, but real. I worked construction and trades, honest work where you can point at the end of the day and say, I made that. Amara worked in marketing. We argued about money and in-laws and whose turn it was to do the dishes. And we kept choosing each other anyway. Daniel got married too, to a woman named Priya. From the outside it looked fine, but I always got the sense it was more arrangement than passion. He had become wealthy quietly, steadily wealthy through a series of investment ventures he never talked about in detail. I admired him for it. When he started mentioning opportunities that were too good to keep to himself, I listened. A few years ago, he brought me one that felt different. We met in his downtown office. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He slid a prospectus across the glass desk and used words like guaranteed, infrastructure, and family looks out for. Family, he told me this one was personal, that he was only letting me in because we went back to scraped knees and stolen street signs. You're my brother, he said. This is me making sure you and Amara are set. I trusted him the way you trust someone who has seen every version of you and stayed anyway. I put in a serious chunk of our savings, then leveraged a little more. The investment collapsed so fast it felt like the floor had been removed while I was standing on it. I didn't just lose money, I owed money. The kind that makes banks aggressive and debt collectors bold enough to call your wife at work. The stress landed me in a hospital bed with a cardiac scare. I was 34, lying there with wires on my chest, suddenly aware of how fragile everything is. Amara sat beside the bed holding my hand. I kept telling her it was going to be okay. I had no idea the worst part was still coming. I was sick, broke, and drowning. Daniel reached out to help, except he didn't reach out to me. He reached out to my wife. I am going to tell this part carefully, because Amara has already carried enough shame for both of us, and I refuse to turn this story into another weapon against her. But you need the truth to understand what came next while I was hooked up to machines and drifting in and out of medicated sleep. Daniel started calling Amara. At first, it looked exactly like what any decent person would do, old family friend checking in, offering to talk to the bank, offering to help with the worst of the debt so we wouldn't lose the house. Amara was exhausted and terrified and watching the man she loved get weaker every day. She said yes to his help without hesitation. Then the terms changed. He never asked outright at first. He let the pressure to the work. He reminded her how much he was doing, how much more he could do, how the collectors weren't going to wait, how the stress might actually kill me if this dragged on much longer. He made himself indispensable before he ever showed his real hand. When he finally did, it wasn't a request. It was a condition. Amara has told me, and I believe her, Tat. She said no the first several times. She tried everything. She called family, looked into loans with rates that would have buried us for decades, even ran the numbers on letting the house go into foreclosure. She was willing to lose everything we owned if it meant keeping her dignity and my trust. But the pressure didn't ease. The phone kept ringing. The letters kept coming. I kept getting weaker. Daniel was the only person standing between our family and ruin, and he made sure she understood that. She caved. It happened on a Tuesday night. He came over under the pretense of dropping off paperwork. She let him in because she was too tired to fight anymore. She has never given me the full details, and I have never asked. What she has told me is that it felt mechanical, empty, like she was watching herself from outside her own body. She cried the entire time afterward. She scrubbed her skin raw in the shower. Then she got into our bed, the same bed where we had made love for 10 years, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I don't say this to excuse what she did. I say it because it's the truth. And because I've spent a long time trying to understand the difference between a betrayal born of selfishness and one born of being cornered by a man who had engineered the entire crisis from the beginning. Daniel didn't just take advantage of her desperation. He created it. He waited for the exact moment when she had no good options left. The debt disappeared. I got better. For months, I genuinely believed Daniel had saved us out of loyalty. I hugged him. I thanked him more times than I can count. I told anyone who would listen that he was the best friend a man could ask for. Then Amara found out she was pregnant. The timeline didn't add up, and she knew it before I did. She spent weeks moving through the house like a ghost, sick with guilt, trying to find the words for something that would end the life we had built. When she finally told me sitting across our kitchen table, eyes on the wood grain instead of on me, felt something in my chest actually give way. Not metaphorically. I felt it physically, like a rib had cracked. I didn't handle it well. I said things I still regret. I left for 3 days and stayed in a cheap motel off the highway, staring at water-stained ceilings and answering no one. But underneath the rage, something kept nagging at me. Daniel, the man who had saved us, had barely checked on me during the worst of my illness. He had been laser-focused on Amara the entire time, and the investment that started this whole nightmare had failed in a way that, the longer I sat with it, felt less like bad luck and more like something that had been designed to fail at exactly the right moment. I hired a financial investigator. It took him 6 weeks to find what I had missed for years. Daniel had routed the investment through a shell company that funneled the bulk of my money straight into accounts he personally controlled. It wasn't a failed investment. It was a scam built specifically to target me, timed specifically to put me in a hospital bed and my wife in a position of total desperation. I handed everything to the authorities. There was a real investigation. Daniel was arrested 3 months later on multiple counts of fraud, my case plus at least 2 other investors he had run the same play on over the years. I watched my childhood best friend get let out of his own front door in handcuffs. Priya stood on the porch in her robe, mascara streaking down her face, watching the man she had married turn into someone she no longer recognized. The neighbors had come outside. Nobody said a word. The only sound was the click of the calves and the quiet sobbing of a woman whose entire marriage had just been revealed as a performance running parallel to a crime. It's been a little over a year since the arrest. I got some of my money back through restitution, though nowhere near all of it. I'm rebuilding one extra shift at a time, one honest paycheck at a time. I went back to the same construction company that laid me off during the worst of the debt. My old foreman didn't ask questions. He just handed me a hard hat and said, "Welcome back. Physically, I'm healthy again. Financially, I'm climbing, slow and steady. Emotionally, I'm still somewhere I don't have a name for, somewhere between grief for the friendship I lost and a cautious hope that maybe the love I still feel isn't completely broken." Amara didn't leave. She's still here, in the house we bought together. She's raising her son, Daniel's son, a few rooms down the hall from where I sleep most nights. We named him Elias after her grandfather. He's almost 2. He has Daniel's eyes and Amara's smile and a laugh that fills the whole house. Lately, I've been sleeping in the guest room more often than not. The master bedroom still smells like her lavender detergent, and sometimes I pause in the hallway, trying to remember what it felt like to walk in there without hesitation. She has never once tried to minimize what happened. She's told me, more times than I can count, that she understands if I can't forgive her, that she'll accept whatever I decide, that she knows what she did while I was in that hospital bed is something she'll carry for the rest of her life. She says it with her eyes on the floor, hands twisted in her lap like she's still bracing for me to walk out for good. She wants me back. Fully, not as a roommate or a serial parent, as a husband, in every way we used to mean it. She wants the late night talks in the kitchen again. She wants to fall asleep with her head on my chest, and I believe her. I can see it in the way she still makes my coffee exactly how I like it, even on mornings I barely speak. I can see it in the way she looks at me when she thinks I'm not paying attention, and here's the part that keeps me up at night. I still love her, not the polite, faded version of love people settle for when they're too tired to start over. I mean the real thing, the same stupid, stubborn love I felt at 21 in that study group when she made me laugh so hard I forgot why I was anxious in the first place. That love didn't switch off just because everything else did. It's still here, sitting in my chest like it always has been, but every time I imagine actually saying yes to her, I see the hospital bed. I see her standing in the waiting room with her phone pressed to her, Daniel's voice on the other end, while I was too weak to even know my own marriage was being negotiated without me. I see the look on her face when she finally told me the truth, the shame, the fear, the terrible knowledge that one desperate decision had changed the shape of our entire future. I don't know if loving her is the same thing as being able to live with what happened. I don't know if forgiving someone who was cornered by a predator is the same as forgiving someone who chose to betray you. And I genuinely don't know if there's a version of us on the other side of this that isn't just two people quietly resenting each other for the rest of our lives while a little boy grows up in the middle of it all. Some days I think I could do it. I think about real therapy. I think about the way Amara has never asked me to pretend this didn't happen. I think about the fact that she was a victim too, and that walking away might punish her for something a monster did to both of us. I think about Elias reaching for me when he falls, the way he sometimes says, "Dada," even though we never taught him to. Other days I think I'd be a fool to stay. I think about the images that still come uninvited. I think about the trust that's been broken in ways time can't fix. I think about what it would mean to raise another man's child while knowing exactly how he was conceived. I think about the quiet resentment that might grow and poison every good moment. And I think about what kind of man I want to be, the kind who stays and tries to build something new, or the kind who walks away and gives everyone a chance at something cleaner. So I'm asking you, because I've stopped trusting my own judgment on this one, if you were me, would you take her back? Would you look at that child every morning and see the man who destroyed you, or a boy who didn't ask for any of this? Could you sleep in the same bed where it happened without the images coming back? Could you ever fully trust her again? Or would you spend the rest of your life waiting for the next secret? And if you walked away, could you live with knowing you left the two people who needed you most when the world had already taken everything else? I don't have the answers. I'm still living inside the question every single day. But if you've been through something like this, or if you can see the whole board when the rest of us are just trying to survive, I'd really like to hear what you do, because right now, I'm still trying to figure out how to be a man who didn't lose everything twice, and whether some things are worth losing all over again if it means keeping the parts of yourself you can still recognize.